This is Jon Heder. I play Napoleon Dynamite. You're listening to the podcast Mark and Me, although you probably already knew that since you're listening to the podcast, so I guess you can just forget what I said. But anyways, have a killer time listening. Go eat a boat agate.
Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark, and coming up on today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Jon Heder. Yes, Napoleon Dynamite himself. If anyone knows me personally as a friend, has met me in the past, has been on Facebook or my Instagram or listened to Skip to the End podcast, you will know that this is one of my favourite films of all time. One of my favourite comedies. And so much so, it's a film I watch with one of my best friends every single time we're together. So it really is a big deal today, and I'm so happy that I finally sat down with Jon and got an interview that I'm so proud of. But before we get into today's episode, let's talk a little bit more about the previous one. So I was joined by Kat Von D and IMX. This episode was huge. You may have seen on my social media, on my Twitter or my Facebook that I've put out, it is our most downloaded episode I've ever done. So out of 28 episodes with the people like Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes, Sir Anthony Hopkins, Neil Blomkamp, this episode with Kat Von D and IMX has had more downloads than all of those. So I can't begin to thank you all enough for downloading, streaming, listening, taking the time to listen to the episode. I've spoken to Kat and she was thrilled with the way it came out. IMX absolutely loved the episode and the interview, and as I mentioned on the last episode, they will both be coming back individually to do episodes in the near future. So thank you all again for listening, and I really am overwhelmed by the support at the moment. Let's get on to today's episode. So if anyone, like I said, knows me, my love for Napoleon Dynamite is huge. When me and my best friend Rich get together, we sit there and we watch this film every single time we're together. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are, we'll make sure that whenever we meet up, we watch this film. It's a film I never get bored of, it's a film I absolutely adore, and I'm happy to share that this is a guest I've wanted ever since we started. So I remember actually sitting with Rich and saying I was thinking of starting a solo podcast where I get to interview people one-on-one. And we joked, and I said, the one guest I want more than anyone else would be Napoleon Dynamite. For me and him, really. It's just a guest that would make our day. And I didn't actually think it would ever happen, but here I am now, sat recording, and I've done the interview, and I, hand on heart, mean this. It's the best interview I've ever done. It's the most fun I've ever had, the most relaxed I've ever been, and I'm so excited to share it with you. So let's get to it. Without further ado, here's my interview with me and Jon Heder. So Jon, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast. My first question for you is, did you want to be an actor at a young age, or was it something else that you kind of wanted to be when you were growing up?
I think the first thing I remember wanting to be when I grew up was an artist, because I was always into art. And then when I finally got to a certain age, realizing, what does that mean to be an artist? Like, I don't really want to be a painter. But to me, that's what an artist was Vincent van Gogh, or someone who just painted on canvases. And so when I got a little bit older, then I was like, I want to make children's books and illustrate and write children's books. And then I got a little bit older, and in high school, when I really kind of found I really enjoyed making videos. I made videos for every class project. I made them for friends. And this is in the 90s in high school when I just had my dad's Sony camera, a little sports mini DV camera. Yeah, my brother and I would make videos for everything, and that's when I felt like, I want to get into movies. I want to make movies, and yeah, I acted in my own movies, and I didn't really think acting at the time, but I knew I wanted to get into the film industry. And then it wasn't until college that I got into film. Into the film program at my university. And part of that is, in any film school, you take acting, you take directing, you kind of try out a little bit of everything. And I really enjoyed it. It was my first real acting class I'd taken, and I really enjoyed it. And I started auditioning for student films and student plays, all like, you know, low key, no agents were involved at that time. And it was just, you know, hey, goofing around. And my friends were like in the film program were like, hey, do you want to be in my video, you know, or my film, my project I got coming up. And that's kind of how it started.
So did you still have a go at the old artwork and children's books, or is that something you've put to bed?
Well, actually, all throughout, I got into animation. And actually, that's what I ended up majoring in. I got into the film program, and about halfway through the program, my counselor kind of sat me down and said, hey, they're opening the animation program here. I know you like art and you like film. So, you know, kind of felt like a natural combination of the two. Why don't you try out animation? And I was really interested in that. And that's what I ended up graduating in, was getting a fine arts and animation degree. And so that's actually probably what I would have pursued more of. Yeah. I knew, like, it kind of worked out at the same time, because right around the time I was finishing up my last year or so in the animation program, we had also shot the film Napoleon, so it was kind of all worked out. Like, I was planning on moving out to LA no matter what. I wanted to get a job in animation, and I knew California was where most of the animation companies were. And but, you know, at the same time I was acting on the side and doing that too. So I was kind of thinking, well, LA is a natural place. It kind of makes sense. But after the success of Napoleon, I was still in college, and I thought, well, I want to go down this route. And I did a little bit of animation afterwards, but it kind of fell by the wayside. I say unfortunately. I mean, I got busy doing acting, and I really enjoyed that. But I've always tried to keep up on, you know, drawing and things like that, and trying to keep my skills honed and tuned. But I think, you know, in my later years, I'm trying to pick some of that back up, and I think it would still be fun to do a book sometime. I don't know if, you know, either a book of a collection of illustrations, or an actual story or narrative, or something to that end. I would love to direct. I mean, I've always been interested in directing, and I think it would be fun I think a dream would be to direct an animated short or an animated feature, somewhere in that world. But we'll see. You know, it's a little hard. It's like the animation I kind of ended up studying was computer animation, and that took a lot of you know, computer and software know-how. And you know, at the time I was proficient and pretty good at the software, but it's been 10 plus years, and unless you are working at that software for a long time, I think the talent would be there. I just need to dust off the old, that's the problem. You can't really dust off the old software. You got to get whatever updated versions there are now. And with, you know, computers and software, it's constantly being upgraded, new versions. It would be a little bit of another learning curve I'd have to jump into. But I haven't thrown it out of the way. I'm very much interested in that.
The thing is, as well, now you're a father, so I'm sure you're drawing a lot more with your kids for their school stuff, and there must be the opportunity that you want to kind of do an animation for them as well, to kind of go, hey, that's Daddy's work, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because I've done a lot of voice work recently in the past couple of years, and I've really enjoyed that. And I don't know if it's the same world, but not, because it's the voiceover world. I mean, you think it's an animation, but you're not really working with the animators. You're not really behind the scenes. You go to a recording booth, and the only people you work with are the writers and the directors. But still, you're somewhat in that world. I mean, I still do get to meet the creators, and I work with the artists a little bit. And I've enjoyed it, and for that reason, like you said, we've had a lot of great times with my kids watching cartoons and animated shows that I've done voice work on, and they really enjoy that. And yeah, I would love to at some point, kind of flip it around and do the same thing, but instead of voicing, creating the animation. That would be a lot of fun.
Do you ever surprise your kids and not tell them that you're going to be in a certain episode or something, and then just kind of sit there and see if they kind of click when they hear it, or is it just a case of, right, we're watching Daddy's work now?
I think I want to say I did that with I'm sure I've done that before. Most of the time they kind of know ahead of time, because it's hard to keep a secret for that long, because
yeah,
doing voice when you do voiceover work, whatever project you're working on, it doesn't come out for like another year and a half sometimes, because they have to animate everything. And my kids get inquisitive, like, hey, what are you working on? Would you go record today? And I was like, well, so it's hard to surprise them. But I think I have done that a couple times, where I've done that more, I think, with movies in some ways, live action stuff, where they'll be watching something like, check this out, you guys, and then I pop up and they're like, wait a second.
So you just talked about, well, obviously wanting to become an actor and the successful role of Napoleon Dynamite, which is, I'm sure, you're most famous for. One of the best comedies, I think, in the last sort of 30 years. I think it's so iconic and so different. I remember the first time I watched it, I won't lie, I thought, what the fuck is this? And then I watched it again and I was like, I love this. I absolutely am obsessed. And it's one of those films that just gets better and better every time you watch it. You notice more and more. What was the audition experience like for that film that's so unique and on such a low budget?
I know. Yeah, that's a weird thing about that film, I think, because I hear that all the time from people, is, man, oh man, I did not like that film when it first came out, or I just didn't get it the first time, but on second and third viewing, I finally started to get it and really enjoy it. And I always find that weird and confusing, because I'd be like, man, if I didn't like a film or didn't get it or didn't like it, there's no way I'm going to give it a second viewing. I'm like, no. I don't have enough time in this world to give these crappy movies a second go.
I kind of had to digest it and kind of think, what just happened? What the hell was...
Maybe that's what it is. It's something that it doesn't necessarily hit people as like, oh, this is crappy. They just don't know what to make of it. It's a digestion period.
Yeah.
Because I get that all the time. And I think, I've had that, everybody's had that with a few movies. I remember, I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan, and I love their movies. And when Big Lebowski came out, that was the same thing for me. I remember seeing that and hearing, oh my gosh, like, I'm so excited to see this. The Coen Brothers, one of my favorites. I think Fargo was the last one they did before Big Lebowski, and I loved, Fargo was incredible. And so I watched it, and on first viewing, I just felt, what is this? This is, I just didn't, it wasn't weirded out. I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of weird, and it's kind of funny, a little funny, but I just didn't think much of it. And then, for whatever reason, I gave it another shot, probably because I felt compelled to, and I needed to, like, make sense of it, and now it's one of my favorite comedies ever. It's incredible. But going back and answering your
no,
question.
The Coen Brothers are genius, and I think the first time I watched Big Lebowski, because it's so beautifully shot, all the bowling shots and the different dream sequences, you kind of, again, you're just kind of bedazzled. You just sat there going, what just happened? And then when you watch it again and you start to find out a bit more about Donnie and the dude, you're kind of just like, okay, there's actually a story as well as this, and everyone's giving an unbelievable performance, and I'm finding everything visually incredible, and I'm laughing my arse off. So I do believe it's a film that just gets better and better, and 20 years later I'm still watching it now as if it's the first time I've ever seen it.
And it is. It's such a quotable film. I mean, maybe it's those kind of films, the ones that aren't. It's not strong on story. I mean, if you try to explain what Big Lebowski is about, it's like, well, this guy, his rug is stolen,
and he wants to get it back.
Steve thought he was someone else, and
yeah,
try to get back, and then he gets kind of, caught up in this web of nothingness, and So, and when you try to describe Napoleon's plot, it's kind of the same thing. You're just watching it. It's about the characters. It's these films that don't hit you right away because the story doesn't grab you. You can't summarize it in one line. And maybe that's what it is about these films. Like, I can't make sense of it right away because it isn't meant to, do that. Like any Marvel film, you want to make sense of the plot right away, but you don't. This is more of a character study and kind of creating a world. It's like learning a new language. The first time you try to speak any new language, well, you don't know what you're doing, and then you live in that country for a few weeks, few months, and you're like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to get it.
I forgot what the Napoleon Dynamite question was now.
You asked about the audition, like.
How was it? Yeah.
No, there was no audition. It was a very different kind of. What we did is we made a short film, and back in 2001, Jared Hess, who wrote and directed Napoleon Dynamite, he was he was a student in the same film program. We had classes together, and he wrote this short script for his directing class. It's like the intro. It was a production or a directing class. I can't remember exactly, but it's one of those. You write a short script and you get it produced, and he wrote the short script that he came to me about playing another character. And then when his main actor didn't work out, he was like, "Hey, I think you can do this." And so it was a short film called Peluca, and it's basically it's Napoleon, but he's got a different name in the short film. But it's the character of Napoleon, and you have like Pedro and one other character, and those are really the only characters in the short. So he got me for that, and I think it's because we had been in, we were in a couple classes together. We had mutual friends. I think he saw one student project I was in and just saw what I was like in real life. I suppose that was my audition, just hanging around me. Just say, "Hey, I think you can do this." That's essentially, he was a student. It was a student project, and therefore he didn't have a lot to lose. It's like, okay, it's just, hopefully get a grade. But, Jared, and I knew it then, and I know it now, the whole time, that he had a vision, and he really wanted to make, this piece of art. And it wasn't just a grade, it was something that was, he was passionate about. And so that was my audition process. I mean, he just gave it to me, and I read the script, and I just 100% got it. Like you said, sometimes you're not quite sure. You watch on first watch, you're kind of trying to make sense of it. I knew right away, like, I could speak this language. I read it. I was like, I know this world. I know this guy. Everything about this totally makes sense. And so, I would talk to him and say some of the lines, and he'd tell me some of the lines and kind of give his version, and I give my version. And then we just laugh about it and like, oh, what if we try this and do this? And that's kind of really how it started with that character. I think he did we shot the short film in Preston, Idaho, where we shot the feature. And that was kind of his hometown for all of his high school years. And so, and it was about a 3 or 4 hour drive from school. Because we went to school in Utah, and the film Preston, Idaho, is like right on the border. So it was about a 3 or 4 hour drive. We drove up there for a weekend, and Jared had done auditions at the local high school for the Pedro, and this was a different actor at the time, and so he did do like little auditions for that. But then we do the short film, and everybody loves it. And when I say everybody, it becomes a hit in the college sense.
Yeah,
all our friends and family loved it, and our film professors and people like that really liked that. Right, really liked it. And we got into one festival, but it's still it's a short film. It's a black and white, 16 millimeter grainy film that nobody knows about. And that was really the audition for the feature, when Jared came to me shortly after we made the short film and said, "Hey, you want to I want to make a feature next summer. They're like, we got to do a whole movie of Napoleon. What do you think? And I was like, yeah, I'm on board. And so I guess that's how I got involved with Napoleon. And then he properly auditioned for all the other roles except for Kip. The role of Kip, who plays my brother, that was played by Aaron Rule, who was a friend of Jared's, and he was another student at the college, at the university we went to. And so, yeah, I mean, aside from a few other tiny roles, Aaron Rule and I were the only guys that he's like, all right, he wrote these characters with us in mind. And then everybody else, he, auditioned out of Utah or LA.
That's amazing. And I mean, the characters themselves are so kind of iconic. You look at Kip, you look at Napoleon, you look at Uncle Rico, even Rex Kwando, Debbie. They're all just, you want to quote them all the time. You love all the characters. There's no kind of horrible character. I know Uncle Rico's a bit of a git, but you still love him. You love the fact he's going out to work and he's just so, his hair and everything he wears is just so memorable. I love it. I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, it was fun.
You shot the whole thing, didn't you, in 22 days? Is that true?
Yeah, we shot it. I mean, it's an independent feature, so we were, on a very, very fixed budget and small budget and time restraints and everything. I think that's how it goes with most, small indie features. You don't have a lot of time. You shoot it in a couple weeks, sometimes a month or less. And we just all went up to, most of us, I mean, besides the actors that he had hired out of LA, who they flew in, almost everybody else was based there in Utah as film students. All our crew were mostly just friends in the film program. And so we all just went up and camped out in Preston, Idaho for a couple weeks and shot the film and had the time of our lives making it.
Were you at the time when you're on set and you've got this kind of permed hair and these glasses and these kind of crazy t-shirts with horses on and random characters, were you there at any point thinking this is going to do really well, or were you just thinking this is just a small little independent film and I'm having fun with my friends? Were you actually thinking, I wonder if this is going to go to the cinema, I wonder if this is going to win MTV awards, I wonder if this is going to blow up?
I didn't get that far. It was more of the latter. Like, I knew this is an indie film, but even though I was a film student, I still didn't fully have a grasp of the film industry and exactly how it worked and the scope of it all. And I knew when we were shooting it, I remember thinking this could be awesome, but I was also very aware that nobody may ever see this. This is a small film. This is, for all we know, we may get this on a DVD that we may have, that we might try to sell at the local church or something, I don't know, that I knew that this wasn't a legit film that's going to be in, legitimate theaters.
Yeah. I
guess I didn't fully understand exactly how film festivals worked, or getting it out there and getting seen and bought. And I must have understood that to a certain degree. So maybe I thought, oh, you never know, this will probably be the kind of movie that is always small, and some people see it at an art house cinema maybe. I do remember thinking we always were on set, me and the crew and the cast, we all would just kind of fantasize and talk about, oh man, this could be, you could make toys. I remember thinking very clearly, they could make talking characters. They should action figures, but how funny would it be to have action figures of these guys? And each one would have their catchphrase. And I remember we would totally talk about that and say, it would be great. But I don't think we ever thought this is going to happen. We just thought, wouldn't that be cool? In a certain world, I could totally see this happening. But I didn't think it actually would.
So what's it like now when there's actual Funkos available? There's plastic toys that say your most famous sayings. You can buy T-shirts with Vote for Pedro. It must be insane.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, I'm kind of I kind of called it.
Yeah.
I was like, it wasn't. It's not so much that as it came out, as it became more popular, as each new item came out, with a talking pen or a talking doll or all the weird random merchandise that came out. It wasn't it was a shock that it was becoming real. It was coming to life. But at the same time, this is the kind of stuff we were joking about on set. We're like, yeah, this kind of makes sense. I guess I just didn't think it was going to happen. But what? Oh, they're doing that. So it was in all senses of the phrase, a dream come true. You know what I mean? It was fun. It was a total ride seeing it all happen. And now, now it's just kind of like it's kind of solidified itself being, more than 10 years later, that it's like, okay, I get it. Yeah, it's a cult film. It's a cult film. People will always kind of remember this film in its time of the day. It has this timeless feel, and people connected to it, and it's great because people always seem to connect to it. People are always showing their kids, and they're reintroducing it to a new generation of viewers, and I think it's awesome because apparently, like, Napoleon just kind of speaks to the characters, and especially I think the character of Napoleon, and it's not just, I guess it's not just Napoleon, it's Kip. Everybody in the film is awkward.
Yeah.
And those awkward years of youth, and feeling like you're being bullied, or feeling like you don't quite fit in, or feeling like you have your own world inside your head that makes sense to you, but nobody else gets it. Everyone in any generation, in any, I think, decade can get that.
So what was your actual response like, and the rest of the crew and your friends? Because no one in a million years, even yourself who was enjoying the kind of fantasy of figures coming out, what was it like when this film became a cult, huge hit, which so many films fail to do? Let's be honest, a cult film to be established now, it doesn't happen often. Yeah, we can use The Big Lebowski as a great example. We can use stuff like Clerks. There's not many. To get that in the last sort of decade is a huge achievement for all of you.
Yeah, it's hard to... I think about it a lot, and I think we're right in a weird moment, not just in film history, but in culture. Like you mentioned Clerks and Big Lebowski, those are 90s films, and when you really think of cult films, it's first of all, it's any film that's been around for a while, has to age a bit, it's got to be older, and so I feel like we're almost at the tail end of being able to do that in a time when it was right at the beginning of social media, but social media still really wasn't. I think, they had Facebook, but we didn't have a Facebook page. We had a website. We were still just using good old-fashioned websites, to help market the film. I mean, you try to imagine a film like this now, and I don't know, would it do the same? Maybe it would. I mean, words can certainly spread much quicker than it used to, but there's also an oversaturation of films, right?
Definitely, and I think the good thing about Napoleon Dynamite was it was word of mouth. In England especially, I remember living with some band friends, and one of my friends had the DVD and was like, you need to watch this. We all sat round. It was like, then they told their friends about it, who then wanted to come and watch the DVD. And then, because it wasn't on in the cinema, we couldn't go and watch it. We had to go and buy it, or get our hands on it. And it'd be then, okay, my friend Pete wants to watch it, and my friend Rich wants to watch it, and James wants to watch it. And everyone I knew then started talking about it as if it's kind of this little gem, like a hidden little piece of treasure that we wanted to share. And that's crazy now, because you look back and now on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you'd just be telling the whole world about it, and it'd be on YouTube and you could stream it and all this. But back then it was more of you had to work to see it, and then when you saw it, it was like you'd achieve something,
Yeah, maybe it was, I mean, believe me, I've thought about this a lot, and it is. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't exactly predict, if it came out now, would it do the same? Because you're right, it'd almost be instantaneously. Word of mouth is just much more quickly spread now, because you can tweet about it and then everybody sees it. You get one famous person who sees it. Like, for example, right around the time it came out, David Letterman, the first talk show I ever did was David Letterman, which was, I was like, kind of jumps right to the top, and I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So I was extremely nervous, but it was awesome because, here I am sitting across from him, and I've, watched his shows many times for many years, and here he is kind of trying to make sense. He's like, all right, telling people exactly kind of what you said at the beginning. He's like, I don't know if any of you have seen this. It's a weird movie. I didn't get it the first time, and I had to go watch it a second time. I never do that, but it's great, and he really liked it, and he's telling people to watch it, and I was like, well, that's great. This is David Letterman telling people, and a lot of people watch David Letterman. But, there's, for all the people who didn't watch David Letterman, which there's still plenty, like you said, it's word of mouth, and it's literal word of mouth. I mean, there's probably some online chat groups, but most of the stories I get from fans, it's either me and my girlfriend were at the theater and we just saw this weird poster, so we went and saw it, and then we were like, oh my gosh, we have to tell our friends, and all over the country people were always saying the same story as you said. You're either introduced by someone else who says you got to see this, and you've never heard of it, and you're right, you've never heard it because there's only one website about it. There's no Twitter or Facebook or any Instagram, nothing telling about it. It's either you hear about it from a friend, and it's not streaming.
I was going to say, no Netflix, no Amazon, nothing.
Well, we had Netflix, but it was just DVDs.
Yeah.
We didn't have streaming sites, and we didn't have all these different channels. So the only way you could see it was in the theater, and so I think giving it that theatrical release was a huge thing for us, and it gave people that special. I think this is definitely a play for in the argument of, what's better, to have all these streaming services and have movies going straight to your Netflix and watching it at home, or going to the movie theater. And of course, a lot of people will argue going to the movie theater creates a special experience. So many people tell me about their special experiences seeing Napoleon in the movie theater the first time and how memorable it was. And I'm not going to remember half the movies I saw. I'll be like, oh yeah, I saw that. I guess I saw that at home on Netflix. Yeah, just while I was sitting at home in my couch. But, a theater experience is going to be different. It's going to be, you're giving it a shot. It's much more of a chance and a risk you're taking when you go to a movie, because it costs a little bit more money, and you're going out. You're getting a babysitter. You're going on a date with someone you don't know very well. There's much more involvement, much more ingredients to creating a tangible memory.
It's so true. It's weird when you say it. Like, it seems such a big thing now for someone to actually go out, get dressed, meet their friends, risk putting their money into a film they've not heard of, or they've only seen a trailer on YouTube or something. And back then, it was a gamble, but you didn't mind because you went to the cinema, you got out. It was a social event, and now it just seems too. Oh, it's Annihilation. It's come straight to Netflix. You watch it, and it's just so it's just so disposable. You've watched it. It's done. You move on. What's next? You just binge through stuff. And
people didn't have as nice of entertainment systems. It's weird now that we live. Oh yeah, you can go buy a big old flat screen TV for 4K TV for pretty cheap, and it's like everybody has these awesome, home systems, but back then they were still kind of like, not everybody has it, and tube TVs still exist.
Yeah,
and so you are not only you seeing it, but then you have these repeat viewing parties. People are like, okay, you guys, me and so just saw this last night. You have to see this. Let's go, and they get their group of friends, or they get their whole family, and they go to the theater, and then it's like, instead of going to one person's house and you're all crowded around one tiny TV, you got a whole party with you, and you could do that. You go to the theater and you watch it, and again, that became this thing that people tell us. They go back and they loved introducing it to new people, because any film now, you want to go see a film, but if you're like, oh my gosh, I just got home, the new Avengers film was incredible, I got to take everybody else to go see it. Well, no, you know that they've already seen it.
Yeah.
If they haven't seen it in the first couple, if it's already been out for a couple weeks, then they've seen it already. You're not introducing them to anything new. But with Napoleon, it was out in theaters for such a long time, but it's because they would only put it in a few theaters. Like, it started out in a few theaters, and then it started out here, and especially, people were making treks and going, a city or two over in order to see it. Because it wasn't until, like, I think 5 months after its initial release date that it was kind of spread out in a lot of theaters, and it was much more easier. And it was around the time when it was fully accessible that then they released it on DVD, and so it was kind of good timing, and then everybody started great. It was a huge DVD seller.
Looking back, I spoke to a lot of actors and actresses, and I find it quite strange that many people I speak to, even the huge names, never watch back their work. Are you one of the people that were straight away there to want to watch it back, and you sitting there with your kids now watching Napoleon Dynamite?
I guess it depends on the project. It's like, obviously the ones, I'm really proud of and I like. I try to be happy with most of the work, and I do. I've seen... I can safely say for most of my work I've seen.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's because, I want to see how it comes together. I was either to some degree I want to be proud of it. I've done some where I'm like, oh, the script was great, and then we shoot it, and you're like, okay, we had the time of our lives making it. So now I want to see how it comes together. And sometimes you'll see it, and you're like, okay, I don't need to see that again. Or, oh, it was fun, but, like... this isn't for everyone, or I don't know, maybe it'll fall by the wayside, or maybe I'll wait 20 years and then someone will bring it up, and maybe my kids will be okay to watch it then. That's with some of them, and then other projects, it's kind of just the waiting. It's like Napoleon, I have watched with my kids, but it's different with your kids, they started to get it more now, but when I first watched it with them, like about a year ago, they're just like seeing me.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's you. And they're not laughing as much. They kind of laugh it, but they don't, find it as funny because they're just like, it's Dad. It's not, I don't know, But then I've done voiceover. Oh, they love a lot of my voiceover stuff. And they'll sit down, we'll watch. I did a show called Pickle and Peanut. One of the, best projects I've worked on that I loved. And I voiced one of the main characters, and they love it. We'll sit down, we'll watch that together, and they can't get enough of it. And that makes me, like, really happy, to see them. And I don't think it's really, oh, that's Dad. Like, because they don't see me. They're not as distracted by seeing Dad.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a couple of questions about Napoleon Dynamite that I've always had on my mind, and it's a very special film to me. I was late for my own wedding because of Napoleon Dynamite. Me and my best man at my wedding, we always have any occasion, if it's a birthday or Christmas, we always sit and watch Napoleon Dynamite every time we meet up. It's just kind of a ritual that we have. So on my wedding day, we were watching it, and you always kind of pause it and just have a drink and stuff. Before I knew it, I was supposed to be at the wedding, and I was late because of your film, which is crazy. There's a couple of things I've always wanted to know. So the first one is, how many takes did it take for Uncle Rico to hit you in the face with his steak?
That took a number of takes, and it wasn't Uncle Rico who's some just crew guy who was throwing it, and it was tough. It was a tough take to do because I'm fairly far away. I'm moving on a bike, and they have to throw it so that it hits me and makes me stop. So they're having to hit a moving target with a piece of meat
in the face,
and it's not a close-up, it's kind of a far shot. So it was a really hard one to do, so they kept throwing it. It kept grazing my fro, or like slapping the side of my cheek, or not even that would have been great. It was just, it would always barely miss me. And finally, I think, it must have been like the fifth take. We didn't have time all day, but of course they knew they had to get it. So it's probably like 5 or 6 takes in that, because, we'd have to reset the shot.
Yeah. It
didn't feel like it was super quick. It was still like, okay, you guys, we got to get this. And then finally it was actually John Grice, who plays Uncle Rico, who said, no, here, let me try it. It's supposed to be me anyway. So even though you don't see him, but yeah, he gets off camera and I think they would have been careful and were doing underhand throws. But he was like, forget this. I used to play baseball, kind of like in true Uncle Rico fashion. And yeah, he chucked it. And his first try, he hit me.
Wow.
We're like, all right, that's it. And I tried my hardest to stay in character. I was like, oh, no, don't screw up. Don't break. This is it. And that was the only, after that, we didn't need another shot.
I'm impressed. I was waiting for you to say like 67 takes or something.
Yeah, right. They would have been, Jared, by the 10th take, Jared probably would have been like, we'll just have to use this. We'll have to, because again, he's like, we don't have all day. We have to move on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He probably would have just done like a close-up.
Yeah.
Like just pulled the camera in way tighter and just have it, hit me from off screen. But that wouldn't have been just funny.
The other one that's always got me is every time you go and take your bike to take off some sweet jumps, you must have hurt your knackers a few times because you're hitting that bike with force. That isn't like CGI. I can feel the pain as you're hitting that jump.
Well, thank you. That's a testament to my acting. Everything really was just, on this film, everything was 3 or 4 takes at max time. It was just always, you just shoot everything a couple times. So I think the jump thing was maybe 2 or 3 takes. It's like the first time we did it, either it didn't break, or if it did, it just looked sloppy. But I don't remember doing a lot of takes of anything. We did like 2, maybe 3 takes of that. And I did it in a way where it was so, the board was scored so much so that it would break just by breathing on it. And so, luckily, I almost get bummed when people ask me, like, did you really drink that egg juice? Or did you really hurt your, thing? And people, I think, they don't want to hear the truth. Because the truth is, like, no, it didn't hurt. I made it look hurt, but it didn't hurt. Or no, that wasn't egg juice. It was just orange juice. Or no, the time machine didn't really electrocute my balls.
Stop telling me this. You're ruining my favorite comedy.
I know.
Next you'll tell me there's no Santa Claus.
I just tell people, you got to stay in the moment. You got to be method and do it for real. Jumping over that fence, that hurt.
Fuck, yeah, when he's running after you.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a height as well.
Yeah, it was just like, Jared's just like, hey, run over that fence and just run away. So I was like, I got to make this as kind of awkward and goofy as I can, and like clumsy as I can. And I was like, oh yeah, that hurt.
There's this one shot as well that, this is how obsessed I think me and my friend Rich are, but there's a shot where you're looking, I think, after the jumps have been taken off, and the camera pans out, and as it looks at you, there's a cobweb stuck to your head that's kind of flying in the air.
Yeah.
Was that deliberate or what? Because it just seems so weird.
No, I don't think that was deliberate. And I think, again, I don't think anybody really noticed it when we shot it.
No.
And it wasn't until later. I mean, I don't remember if they looked at dailies, where you see the stuff that you shoot the day of. He may have, but knowing Jared, he may have seen it and just laughed and just thought, oh, we'll leave it because we're not going to do reshoots. We don't have time. I mean, again, we had so very little money that he must have just thought, oh, yeah, that's funny. We'll just leave it in. Why not? A cobweb hanging out of Napoleon's hair.
I think it works.
Huge. It was weird. I mean, I'm assuming it was a cobweb. I suppose it could have been a strand of cotton from costumes.
It looks like the biggest cobweb ever, but it just works. For some reason, it doesn't. You don't question it. You just go, oh, yeah, that's just a cobweb in Napoleon's hair.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody's going to have spiders in their hair, it's going to be Napoleon.
Massively.
Who knows? It could have been like a spider that came from my hair. I didn't wash that perm because it was a perm. You're not really supposed to wash them. So we washed my hair twice in the entire production. I remember those days when I loved it because the hair guy, he would shampoo and wash my hair and it felt incredible. I could feel my scalp breathing because we wanted it to look as nappy and as gross as possible. So who knows? Maybe a spider was hanging out in there and was like, oh, I'm getting out of here. This guy's going off jumps.
It would make sense.
And that was his escape line.
Amazing. And you broke it. What's crazy about your career is your first big acting role was this iconic character that even in 20 more years' time, people are still going to be talking about. You worked on this very low budget with some of your friends that was never really going to take off. Then you went and kind of took a huge jump on Blades of Glory with Will Ferrell. And, I mean, my God, talk about a jump in kind of budget and surroundings and crew. That was huge. You don't get much different. What was that like? Because you only just adapted to Napoleon Dynamite in your first major role, and then you're in this big Hollywood comedy blockbuster, which, let's be honest about it, it was huge. Working alongside Will, you must have been like, is this real?
Yeah, it was the opposite kind of an experience, because in almost every sense of the way, like, well, and I mean, it was still a blast to make. And so that part wasn't opposite, but it was only just a few years. I mean, you're right. The movie came out in 2004, and I started having conversations about Blades of Glory in 2005. So it was just like, a little over a year later. I was talking to Ben Stiller, who produced Blades of Glory, and he was kind of the one who got the ball rolling. I was just like, oh my gosh, Ben Stiller, Will Ferrell, what is going on? And it was the entire experience was a pinching yourself kind of experience. I was like, this is amazing. I'm just going to have the time of my life and love this. I can't believe this is happening. I'm standing. I remember the first, moment I met Will, actually, because it was, most of the time you meet and you do table reads and you do stuff like that ahead of time. But it was actually Ben Stiller, who was originally going to play the role that Will played, because it was his production company and he wanted to do it. So it was going to be him and I, and we actually did the table read with him and I and a lot of the cast. But I don't, know entirely all the reasons, because he still made the movie, but I think it was a mix of being I think there was a little bit of trepidation he felt on his part about ice skating. I think he was a little worried about the ice skating, and I think a big part was, after hearing it in the table read, he felt the character of Chaz was too much like his character from Dodgeball.
Yeah.
And he was very particular about, like, I don't want to copy any of my roles. I wanted, do something different each time. I don't know exactly all the reasons why. And I was pretty bummed when he said he wasn't, and I think there was also scheduling issues. I'm not sure. He was always shooting something. So, but when he told me he was like, we'll get someone. Yeah, I think we're going to get Will Ferrell. I was like, oh, okay. That's pretty good.
It's weird now, because I can't imagine anyone but Will. It's kind of like, it's his film,
And like I said, it was, so after he signed on, it was like, hey, Will, here's a movie you're going to do, and you're going to start learning how to ice skate. And so the first time we met was on the ice, when we met with our coaches, and they were going to start training us. And I was like, so we met literally on the ice, and you could see, like, the anxiety a little bit in his eyes as well, but also, like, the excitement, and I was excited, and so we were both, like, it felt like it was equal ground, because here I am, like, I grew up in college and high school watching this guy and think he's one of my favorite comedians, and yet he's looking at me kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're about to do this, like, this is going to be crazy, like, weird, because it's such a funny idea of, like, an ice skating comedy with two guys. I mean, it was like so unlike anything, we had seen. That's why when it was pitched to me, I was like, this is a no-brainer. Yes. Like, we're definitely doing this. And it was incredible, because, I was working with Will Ferrell, and we were, and not just Will, but all these other great comedians. It was a huge production, and it was like big sets and a lot of money put in. So it was a different experience, and I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just, like, not as much of the charm in some ways was there as it was in Napoleon, because instead I've got a big old trailer, and I'm going in there, and I'm eating lunch by myself sometimes, or with my trainer. I'm eating lunch with the person who's, making sure I'm eating well and staying somewhat physically fit, because we actually have to play Olympians.
Yeah.
So there was more of that sense of work. Okay, this is work. This is, in between shots or this or that, we got to get our skates on and go practice. And you don't know half the crew's name. Most of the crew you don't know. You don't ever meet, because they're either in special effects or they're setting up these rigs. It's just a completely different experience. Whereas Napoleon, I had no trailer. I was taking naps in Grandma's house, where we shot in Napoleon's house. And I knew every single person by name, and it was easy. We were all buds, and we were all quoting the movie together. And if there was a problem, everybody knew about it, But this was a big old Hollywood film, and Blades of Glory, where it was just kind of opposite. And yet, again, it was still a blast, because the immediate people I had to work with were fun. And that was just incredible.
That's what I think. You can't imagine being on set, even when you're not shooting with Will and it not being fun. You can just imagine him always wanting to kind of be like a child and just have fun.
Yeah, and I loved skating. I loved learning to ice skate. I really enjoyed, even though it was work, getting on those skates and putting on the outfits. I was like, I'm loving this. I thought it was great, and it's not the easiest pastime to keep up. You have to have an ice rink, but I still enjoy it. and I really enjoyed it. It was funny, amazing to work with Will. I love the skating aspect. It was great.
So obviously after that you did some TV work. You were in stuff like My Name is Earl, which is a great comedy. Did you like the element of going into TV, or did you prefer the film when you were actually on set and stuff? Was it a much more kind of stronger atmosphere to be around people involved in film because you were used to it, or was it quite nice to venture away and do some TV work?
I think, you call it TV work. I've done a few guest spots on a couple of shows, but I haven't done anything, big or like regular, like a series regular type of role. And I would love to. I mean, when Napoleon came out, I first got an agent, I first got into the business. This was 2000, the mid 2000s. And TV still wasn't what it is today. And I was still hung up on I want to do movies, and I just want to do movies. But if something interesting comes along in TV, and nowadays it feels like you would be stupid to turn away any TV. That's what we're fishing for. That's what we want, is a great TV show, because a great TV show, we all know nowadays, rivals any film. The production, the quality of writing, and the direction, everything about, so much about, good, knowing the capabilities of good TV now. And I don't know if I say it's easier, but you just see a lot more good TV that feels cinematic.
Yeah, we're at the golden age right now, I think.
I could give you an endless list of TV shows that I would say, oh, I would love to have been on that, or I would love to have been involved in this somehow, easily, no problem. So, the little bit of television I've done, I do enjoy, and I would, again, I would love to do it, to do more of it, but I love both. Obviously in our binge watching. In this binge-watching generation, everybody's talking about the TV shows, and it's, all right, what are we going to watch today? Well, it's easy. It's whatever TV show we're on, right now. But every now and then I'm like, no, honey, we got to watch movies. Movies are awesome and still are kind of my passion. So, I love both.
So what's the future looking like for you? Obviously, we returned to Napoleon Dynamite via the TV series, so you got to do your voice acting again on a show that you were very, very famous for, which must have been a bit surreal.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the very start of this interview that you used to make films. Would you love to get behind the camera and actually have a go at directing some stuff now, or?
I would love that, yeah. I'm really trying to figure out how to make that happen. I would absolutely love to direct sometime. I'm trying to write right now. Kind of want to dive into that a little bit and develop some. I have some television projects that I'm trying to develop. So hopefully the future is, getting more into television and finding stuff there, and getting into directing and doing more. I love doing voiceover.
Yeah,
that's a ton of fun. So and I still do lots of almost like once a year or a couple a year, I'll do independent films, and I find independent films really are some of my favorite things to do. Truly, and there's so many different kinds of work. I've done voiceover, and a good voiceover job is one of my favorite things. But it's so different than so much of the other things I've done. And independent films, I just truly love doing, because most of the time, you're getting with. It kind of takes me back to the days of Napoleon. You're normally shooting outside of LA. You're going somewhere kind of fun and cool for a couple weeks or maybe a month. It's kind of like a big summer camp. You're hanging out with all these people. You're stuck with them, the cast and the crew, and you're getting to know them, and you're hanging out, and you're having fun and making friends, but you're also doing something that pretty much everybody involved is passionate about. It's not just a job. Independent films are less, all right, we got to, make a few bucks, and we got to do this because it's a job. Because most of the time they can't pay as well in independent films. So, people are doing it because they want to, and they believe in the vision and in the story and the potential of what this film could be.
So the future's looking pretty good if you get to do all these projects that you would like to do, more voice work, more films, definitely directing,
It looks
I think.
great. If I can do all that stuff, the future's looking great.
Are you able to put a rumour to bed for me? Because this week on Twitter we've had Napoleon Dynamite 2 trending at one point. Is this happening, or is it just another bullshit fan-made poster that people are spreading around like we get every few years?
Again, unfortunately, I have to bring the bad news to people. That's not what they want to hear. It's just a fan-made thing. I don't know, who made it or why. I guess, people just do things for fun. It's just probably wishful thinking. But then you post something, and then everybody sees it. Even though I'm like, well, take a look at it. You can tell it's fake. That's the original poster. Why would we use the original poster? Well, this is almost 15 years later. We're not going to look the same.
No.
If we did in Napoleon 2, it'd probably be how are they approaching it? I don't think Napoleon would look the same unless, I don't know how they'd approach a sequel. Does it take place the year after Napoleon, or is it supposed to be, years later? Who knows? I almost felt like I should get on and officially say that, because I'm sick of everybody on Facebook and Instagram and everything's my phone just lighting up with, hey man, is this for real? Is this for real? Is this for real? Enough! Get out of my life!
I was looking at the poster thinking surely they would have had an updated image of you, probably slightly grey, Kip gone bald. You'd hope Uncle Rico is definitely bald at this point, and there might be LaFonda with the baby. Surely there'd be something. They wouldn't just rehash the old poster. It's just I don't know. I think people are just clinging on to a little bit of hope.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who would. Yeah, for sure. That's still kind of the number one question I'm asked is, is there going to be a sequel? And I think with those kind of films, sometimes they do sequels and sometimes they don't. And when I say these kind of films, the ones that don't really call for a sequel, like Big Lebowski or Napoleon, or or you think of Clerks, or something that's just more it's character based. It's not really about the story. Of course, then again, I guess you could just do. Maybe it's easier if it's. I don't know. They did do a Clerks too, and they did do a. What was the recent? They made an Anchorman too. I remember when that came out. That was, to me, I quoted that movie all the time. I loved it, and then I was like, oh my gosh, they make an Anchorman too.
But then after I watched it, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I didn't need that. I wasn't really pining to see what happened to those characters. It felt rushed for me. I didn't need it.
Yeah, you don't know. Is it because we just want to see more? Do we want to get the same feelings that we got the first time we watched it? Because now we've heard that, but some of it's what new jokes are you going to give to us now? I need new material. We need fresh material to re-quote. So sometimes is that what it is? Are we afraid that if we make a sequel, fans are finally going to be sweet, and then they watch it and like, yeah, I mean, we don't really need that, or it's never going to be as good as the original. But some movies, I mean, I'll say it here. Of course, I grew up, I loved Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And you're like, how do you make a sequel? I mean, I guess you can make a sequel because it's not really a sequel. It's just another movie that's another world with this character. That's really how it should be done. And so the sequel, Big Top Pee-wee, it's different characters, different everything. You just have the same character, and I love it just as equally. I love that movie. And so I try to think, if we ever did make a sequel to Napoleon, it would be different. I think it would have to be different.
I think what's so difficult about Napoleon is because you're on set and you're filming this film with no expectations to be that big, you'd have so much pressure on you to deliver. Have you seen Tommy Wiseau's The Room?
Yeah, of course I've seen.
Yeah, like I never want to see The Room 2 because it's so magic because he didn't realise that he was making this another cult classic that now is huge because of The Disaster Artist, but there's certain films I don't think need it, and I don't think Napoleon Dynamite needs a sequel. I don't think The Room would ever need it. I don't want Wayne's World 3. It's been too long. I never want to know now. I'm happy with the way it ends. I just think you can ruin it, and I think leave it. Even though isn't it nice to leave people wanting more?
Yeah, no, that's normally the idea. You're just like, hey, don't ruin something. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And it's not even that's not why sequels are always made. It's it's because of money, and sometimes because you want to give the fans what they want. But I think if we did another Napoleon, and this is just my opinion, I have not discussed this with Jared, but I feel like you'd have to do something really different. And it could maybe be the same characters, but I don't know, like just a different approach to the material, a different kind of movie maybe, because you have to give something that they don't expect. Otherwise, you're doing, I didn't even see it yet, and I want to see it just so I can decide for myself. But when they made Dumb and Dumber 2, the first Dumb and Dumber I loved, one of my favorite comedies, and then they come and do Dumb and Dumber 2, and I mean, from what I heard it's like, not as funny, and it's like, oh, it's sad, and it's probably just them trying to come back and do the same thing, and similar jokes.
It's tragic because you've got the 45-year-old Jim Carrey trying to still be 20 and do the same kind of lines, and it doesn't work. It's been too long. They didn't need to do it, and it's a shame.
And so that's what I'm like. I feel like either we do that, and then it just feels like, oh, this is sad just watching everybody trying to do the same lines and stuff. I think it would have to be either real time, like, no, watch Napoleon now as like a dad, or something sad, like, oh, this is a weird, depressing film, and I'd almost love that more. Like, this is Napoleon, but he wouldn't, see, in my opinion, is like, he wouldn't be married. He'd be like divorced. He'd be a single dad who only gets to see his kids, like, he has 2 kids, and he only gets to see them very, rarely, because he's just not doing well.
So I'm picturing like Napoleon Dynamite meets 1 Hour Photo.
Yeah, something like that. To me, I would, if I was a fan if I was on the other side, I'd be like, all right, okay, interesting.
Yeah,
that's what I want. I want something interesting, not just like, okay, we've heard. I mean, it's kind of what we did with the cartoon. Was the sequel? Yeah, that was the sequel. We did. It was the same time period. It was supposed to be the same characters, same kind of lines, but it worked. I almost feel like that's how you do it, and I think we could have easily done way more episodes because I thought they were great and they were really funny, and we kept to the spirit of it, but it gave it enough of being a cartoon, you could really explore and do different things, and it kept it alive, and I think it kept it. You put those we did 6 episodes and on. You put those 6 episodes together, and you've got a sequel.
I'm sitting here now thinking, and it's only just on the kind of heat of the moment, but I'm kind of thinking, those guys should have done a podcast. Imagine those characters talking away about their lives now. That would work. Wow, let's make that happen.
Yeah, maybe that's the sequel. Yeah.
Give it to David Lynch. Let's see what he would do. Give David Lynch Napoleon Dynamite characters.
That's what I'd be like, all right, how about you guys Jared, you write it, David will direct it.
Yeah.
It'll be really
messed up
into his life.
And that's something your kids will not watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I mean, it's an absolute pleasure, and I'm so grateful that you gave us Napoleon Dynamite. I'm sure, and be honest with me, do you get sick to death of people asking you to do the noises and the impressions and the?
It all. I tell this to everybody. It depends on. It's all situational.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. If it's in the wrong situation, and it doesn't call for it, then I'm like, oh. And then sometimes I have a total blast doing it, where I'm ready and I'm prepared, but if it's like in a really inappropriate moment and someone's like, hey, do the voice, I'm like, shut up. And then I'm like, ah, crap. I just gave it to them.
If you're ever at a dinner table just about to eat some food, leave me alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty good. Most people are considerate enough; they don't bother me.
Someone's funeral. Hey, can you do that? Gosh,
Sometimes I'll try to beat them to the punch and just like say something. Get out of here! It's what's great about that is I can be rude to people, but if I just put a little Napoleon inflection on it, then they just think I'm doing Napoleon, and then it's groovy, and they love it. So we both get our cake and eat it too. I can be rude to them and they think it's great.
Did it take a long time to master? Because obviously you do it through the whole film. And when I'm talking to you now, the tone is there. I can hear Napoleon as you're talking to me. But you haven't got the kind of twang to it when you're talking normally. So was it quite hard to adapt, or was it just easy because you just mastered it?
I don't even think I mastered it. It was just part of my DNA. It was just, that's how it's my immature version. That's how I talked when I was, like, if I was frustrated when I was younger, that's basically how I talked. It's how my younger brothers talked. It's just me kind of going back to my youth. And so, yeah, when Jared brought it, that's what I meant by, like, he brought the script to me, and I was like, yeah, I know who this is. This is, like, my younger brothers, and this is me. When I was young, I would get pissed all the time at my older brothers. Like, get off of me, you idiot. And it was just, yeah.
It's there, isn't it? Instant.
How I was. It's really just me, like, it's almost like I've put all this work into maturing and growing up over these years, and then I'm throwing it all away when I revert back to my immature young self.
As I mentioned earlier, my best man at my wedding, who watches this film with me all the time, is called Richard. Can we give him a shout out in the Napoleon voice? Because he will just listen to this, and I know as he's sitting there now listening to this, he will just absolutely lose his shit if he hears it.
Richard, stop sitting at home and eating your butt crusties and get off your stupid anus.
It's been an absolute dream to talk to you today. I hope you've had fun. Wish you all the luck. I really, really hope I get to see a film poster soon saying directed by Jon, because I think that would be a dream. I think you've definitely got the skills and the experience now, and I wish you all the best with everything that you've got coming up.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
So there it is. I hope you enjoyed that as much as me. You could probably hear how much fun I was having for an hour with him. One of the greatest people I've ever spoken to. I really do mean that. It's funny when you record an interview because you kind of go into it really hoping it would be everything you want, especially when it's someone that you kind of idolise and that you've watched so many times on screen that you love. And if it was a really bad interview or they just weren't really cooperating with you, you're just going to be soul destroyed really and heartbroken. It's quite the opposite with Jon. I spoke to him like I've known him for years. I absolutely loved everything he was telling me. It was a real good two-way conversation. I really do feel it's my best episode I've done so far. If you don't agree, that's great. But, I really personally absolutely love this interview. It's a highlight for me and a dream come true. I just want to say thank you to the people that have jumped on board as well for the Patreon site. So It's been a good response. I need more. Don't get me wrong. It's a great response so far, but this is something I've got a target in place, and we're around 20% of the target at the moment. So I'm still needing people to jump on board and help me. And like I've said, it's the price of a coffee to support me. And for a bit more, you're going to get some good rewards back. Some really good prizes are coming up for grabs from Funko, and some really cool stuff from Dark Bunny Tees. So stay tuned on that. The best way to get hold of me is to go on markandme.com. On there, we have all the links to Twitter, Spotify, Podomatic, iTunes, Facebook, Instagram, and also my link to Patreon. So if you did want to throw me a few bucks, jump on there, and it's very much appreciated. It's quite scary that I'm now coming up to episode 30. It blows my mind. I didn't really think that I would get that many done. It was one of those things I'd do now and then, but at the moment I've got guests coming in all the time, so I'm pretty stacked up with episodes for you all, so that's all good news. I just want to finish by dedicating this episode, as I said, to one of my best friends, Rich. He was my best man at my wedding, and this film means a lot to us. It's something that we've bonded over, and our love for this film has grown and grown. And I remember sitting there with you, Rich, and joking that this interview could happen, and it has. So I'm going to dedicate this to you. I love you, dude, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And for everyone else out there, I love you all too, and I'll speak to you all again in a couple of weeks' time.